Welcome back to the Huddle. It's been a long month of getting deep into the mind of David Goggins. We read his book, Can't Hurt Me. And of course, he's been a major figure in today's society about mindset. And to go along this journey with me, I've got a dynamic, growing man. I met Eric about 3 years ago, and it's just been interesting to see him maneuver the world I'm trying to find my way in, and then to listen to his experience, his guidance. Eric Labbe has been a powerful figure in the spaces I'm working towards. So, Eric, say hello to the people.
What's up, people? I'm glad to be here, Wallace. I appreciate the invitation. Always good to talk a little shop with you, man. I always enjoy it.
Definitely, sir. So we talk, like I said, we got into "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins, and I always allow the guest to select a book. So my first question always is, why did you pick this book?
A friend of mine recommended at a gym. We work out together in the mornings, and he actually sent me the Audible version, which was free copy. And obviously, know I've heard of David Goggins. So he was on Joe Rogan and started following him on Instagram, and just kind of really learning about his life through those media first. But I love the way he did the book, man. I listen to a lot of audio while I travel. I'm on the road about 42,000 miles a year, so I get a lot of windshield time, a lot of opportunity to invest in, keep growing and invest in myself, and a lot of that is through audiobooks. So, man, that's why I turned you on to it, to suggest that you might take a look at it. I just really enjoyed the format. It's very unique but effective.
Definitely unique. He started going into calling everything slash because it's a audio book, it's a podcast, conversation, uh, everything. He just goes down memory lane. And the co-reader brought some different insight to the perspective that and stories that David expressed to us. So, in one major thing that I saw in this book, and David talks about it all the time. I've actually watched a few podcasts from him, is mindset. And before we get into any of the details of the book, how did this book affect your mindset? I mean, you've been in this world for 30 plus years. You've experienced a lot. How does reading somebody else's story, this story, affect your mindset?
Well, I've been on this journey, kind of strengthen and shape your mindset since I was a very young man, and you got to continue to feed that to in order to stay on the correct path. Sometimes life will get you down and start beating you up, and you start a little backslide, and you get that woe is me, and then feeding yourself through books like this. Just put yourself back in check and say, you know what, this is my choice. My mind is strong, and I'm gonna keep carrying on this path. Um, so it just came at a time where I probably had a little lapse in the amount of information I was taking in. Maybe I doubled down too much on podcasts and not enough on books, and so it kind of just brought my feet back down where they needed to be, and so I could start running again. So I enjoyed it. It was a good check.
I'm actually excited that you picked it because going in it, I had heard about David Goggins and I thought he was just a big meathead. Honestly, I thought he just talked big about everything, but actually getting into his story, you see how he was formed, and that's something that I want to do a better job of is understanding why a person is or how they became the person that they are because it's so much deeper than the place that they're in right now. I mean, the first time we actually got a chance to sit down, we got a chance to talk a little bit deeper of like how we came to be in the place that we are. And I feel like that's so valuable to the growth of all of us as a whole is to understand people a lot better than just I see you today and that's where you've always been. But where did you come from and what molded you and how can I learn from your experience in life?
Yeah, David. I mean, and taking a second pass through you, and really looking at his childhood and how that shaped him. He starts off in the book, and he's talking about how difficult his life was, and it's a lot of times. for people, men especially, it's hard to revisit some of that stuff. But you've got the advantage of hindsight, looking back at that and how that brought you to be where you are today. I've done some of that in my life, and I was able to look at some situations that were rough on me and what it means to me today. And it kind of is like looking behind looking behind the curtain, looking at Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Because you kind of see, oh, okay, well, I did this when I was a little kid, and that's probably why I have some issues speaking out as an adult. I'm not going to necessarily take things people just say and just keep going, because that's just not how I'm built. It's not how I was shaped. And being able to look at David's life, when he was young, I'm like, man, this dude, once he made that choice that he wanted to be better and push and be the best, he already had put in a lot of that work, a lot of that mental strain. And I think that's what started to mold him as a young man and into a man.
I 100% agree. I don't even think he realized he was being molded for what he has become in his childhood. I mean, of course, he couldn't have. So let's dive into his childhood a little bit. He had an abusive childhood. His dad was physically and verbally abusive to him, his brother, and his mother. And it's experiences where one that really stands out to me was the one that he actually mouthed off to his father, and then they went home and he laid him across the bed and just went to town on him. He said he stood in front of the mirror and had whelps all over his body at 6 years old. And I'm like, what does that do to a child? That's, I mean, physically traumatizing, but mentally traumatizing. And to get to where David is now, that's what I'm trying to understand. Is like, how does somebody that goes through that transform their hurt, their pain, discomfort, trauma into the person he is today? So when you hear about child abuse, how do you feel like that can affect the child, normally affects the child moving forward? Then also, how is it different when you read this book with David Goggins?
I mean, honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, I've been a victim of some abuse coming up.
Yeah,
Maybe nothing like David. It's all perspective, right? It's all
right.
how you interpret what happened to you. One thing I see from reading the book is dad was very well to do. I mean, you don't own a Coca-Cola consortium unless you're a successful business
Right.
person. They don't just give those things away. And then he had to, the skate rink and then the bar and all that.
Nightclub, yeah.
Yeah. So, as young people look at this, and they may see somebody else that they assume has it better than them because maybe their dad drives a nice car, or, they're always wearing nice clothes. You never know what's going on behind closed doors. And that should, people that may not have as much but have a loving family should really appreciate that. Because just because you have all the flashy things doesn't mean that there's a lot of love there, right?
Yeah.
But seeing that abuse, it's easy for me to relate to. But I've always said, if people would use their situation as a launching pad and not as a crutch, then there's nothing in this world you can't do. But you have to make that choice for yourself. I see it in my family. My grandfather was very abusive. Just being from that generation, World War II, he was from Czechoslovakia, so there's a lot of mental disability there.
Hmm.
So it's easier for me to relate to. But looking at some peers and some friends that used it as a crutch and used it as a woe is me and never really can get out of their own way, it's sad to me, because yeah, life's hard, but if you take that pain and you take that difficult times and use it to advance and use it as motivation, I mean, there's really nothing you can't do in this world.
I 100% agree. I was not abused as a child, so I always had a very dreary thought of or image when I thought of a child being abused, and to just kind of the imagery that he created in his story, it saddened me that an adult, somebody that you're supposed to trust and believe in, would do that to his own son. Um, but what I felt like I saw in David, well, one, he had fight, but then I found it in my mindset it was this thing called the Great Escape. So he found something that to hold on to, and it was a subtle piece of the story. I think it was his grandfather was in the military, and he wanted to be in the military. So that idea caused him to chase down this one paratrooper who survived a parachute accident, to chase him down, to give everything he had in him. And then the next step was trying to get into the military himself. And I felt like he attached himself at a young age in high school to the thought that I want to be in the military. And that gave him a goal or something to get him away from the abuse that he was living in. And then just being in the abuse, surviving the abuse, he uses this term callousing the mind. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
know it, but he was becoming more mentally strong than most adults are throughout their entire lives. I hate how it happened. Like I said, it saddened me to know that that's how it went for him. That's how it can happen in the world. But the fact that he was able to overcome and, like I said, find that great escape, um, really brought the whole the story down the line. It brought it home for me. Like, he found his escape in something so small, and that's what I feel like. Even people that who aren't abused, we got to find that thing that we feel like, all right, I want this, and chase it and go get it. I mean, it's amazing what just going will do for your life. So after I get done with my little ramble, I would like to step into a little bit more of David's callousing of the mind on accident. Another part of his childhood was two incidents where people died. His mother's boyfriend, after she left his father, was shot and killed, and he walked past the bloody mess on the floor, where his would have been stepfather died, and then also a little boy died under a school bus that he was riding in, and he just seemed to be desensitized. How do you think those incidents affected him moving forward?
You know, dealing with trauma like that is difficult. I mean, it's difficult for young people and old people alike. I think he was able to kind of internalize that and maybe bury it down. And I think that started with that, callousing of the mind, or making him hard internally. Um, I know he felt, especially as a young man, he had to felt like, why me? Why is this ever going to stop? Is this ever going to stop? And eventually, it started, he started to shift his mind. Instead of saying, woe was me, he started chasing those goals and giving himself some focus and determination. The word says, keep the hand on the plow. And when he started to do that, things started to break loose for him. But there's no doubt it was probably very traumatic for him, traumatic for anybody for that matter.
Yeah, it's a scene later on in the book where the his commander comes in after one of his uh uh platoon mates dies during his SEALs his Buds week,
Mm-hmm.
and the commander says something that's like, you got to move on, and his mindset is, all right, cool, I like that. And to me, I'm like, that might go back to those two instances where it's like people I knew or I saw died right in front of me pretty much, but I just kept moving. Most other people, me, if I had two teammates die when I was in college. I mean, I wasn't even the closest with them, but it struck me. I'm like, this isn't supposed to happen. But he was able to just move past it, and my mind went to, because he did that as a child, that was his natural reaction, to just skirt past somebody that was in the fight with him dying. Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean, look at
okay,
that relationship with his dad when they left. I mean, that's not the death soul leaving the body,
yeah,
but that's
yeah,
a
I got
death of
you.
relationship. And then his brother, they lived with him, and then his brother then moved back in with his dad. So, it's probably those are four separate instances where, the relationship died with his dad and his brother in some capacity, and then seeing these people, he was able to
100%.
dissociate.
I'm glad you tied that in. I didn't catch that. Yeah, it doesn't actually have to be somebody leaving this earth, is leaving your life,
That's right.
and just moving forward like it was nothing. That's wild to me. But we did talk about him going into the military and then eventually into the SEALs. But before he got to the SEALs, he had to face himself in this thing he called the accountability mirror. When you hear the concept accountability mirror, how do you receive it, and do you utilize it?
I love it. I don't do the mirror necessarily, but I do goals every year. I have since I was probably in my mid 20s. My first job out of school was sales, and their salespeople are real big into goals and about self help and things like that. So that's where I took that little piece of it and really just kept it going. But I do goals every year. I have my wife and kids do them with me, and then I laminate them and put them. It's actually next to my mirror, and then I
Yeah.
also keep a copy of it in my truck. So I love it, man. They say people that have goals are 10 times more likely to achieve those goals if they're written down and they visualize them every day than those that don't write them down. So, man, I'm all about it. I'm all about the accountability mirror, the goals, whether it be a poster, however you do it. If you write it down, I think that's a huge first step in achieving what you want to.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. Right now, when I close the door to my gym, I made a little home gym. My all my goals for the year are on that door. So as I close it, I'm locked in this space, and every time I look up from whatever I'm doing, the goals are right there. So it's that constant reminder. Because it's easy. You can write them down and put them in a book and never open it again. But that constant visual of seeing that this is what I want to do, it just reminds you to think about the actions you're taking in that day, to keep moving towards those goals. A goal of David's was to become a SEAL, and I have goals, and I know it's tough to get to those goals, but I don't think I've ever experienced or thought of a goal that was as serious and as hard as it seemed that the SEALs buzz training was. So when you read what he had to endure, not once, not twice, but three times, what did you think about David?
Man, honestly, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be Navy SEAL. So
I can
I
see
can
that.
relate to it from that perspective. I don't know if I ever would have made it, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd like to I'd like to be able to
Try
look
it
behind
out.
the looking glass and see what it would have been about. But honestly, I thought once you made it through Hell Week, that's it. You can't get rolled out. But you see in the book, Buds is a 6 month long course. Hell Week's just
Right.
the first part of it, and he kept getting injured, which I mean, after what they do in Hell Week is highly likely they're going to get injured. But to see him get rolled twice and still go back for that third time, we talked about it in the book how he didn't know if he had it that third time. He didn't know if he wanted to do it that third time. I mean, I could get that. That's a lot to endure.
Yeah.
But then again, his mind was calloused, and he wore that chip on his shoulder that, man, if I said I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And he just kept pushing until he persevered, which I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible from not being able to swim. He's negatively buoyant, and he was like 300 something pounds just to qualify to get in the Navy. I mean, the dude was just knocking it down at every step. And I mean, just tip my hat off to him, man. This is an incredible man.
So you touched on something that I skipped over, but I don't want to. He was 340 pounds or something like that when he was told that he had to lose 160 pounds in 3 months, and he did it. And of course, in your mind, you like how, and then he tells you the I got on the bike 2 hours in the morning. Then I went to the gym. Then I went swimming. Then I came home after work and I rode on the bike again. I went to the gym. I'm like, how do you let your body rest, recuperate to actually lose? He put himself on a diet plan. I'm like, how do you go from somebody that allows yourself to be 340 pounds to stepping in front of a mirror and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna make it happen? That was the most amazing transformation in a split second decision that I have ever imagined. Like I had in my journey, I had to make a decision to become transfer from a kicker to a receiver, and that helped propel me in football. But that was like, all right, next week I'm gonna put these cleats under the goalpost. I'm gonna make this decision. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run down there, put my head down. It was just like, you know what? This is what I want to do. Gone. And to do that, mind boggling, mind boggling. So in his military career, he seemed to like pain. Like it was like that was he was addicted to it. Do you feel like that ties back into some of his childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably comfortable for him to live in that space, to abuse himself like that. To run these ultra marathons and to do all this crazy stuff physically. Uh, you know, it's easy to do when you're in your 20s, but you start getting in your 30s and 40s, things start to break down. It's a little bit harder to do. Which, if you know David Goggins, you can see. And I don't know if he talks about it in a book or if he talks about it on a podcast, but he stretches like 2 hours a night now because
Right.
his body was breaking down so bad. Um, I can't conceive, to speaking to where he was when he started that journey in the Navy. It's almost like he was a different person, because I can't really understand how the same man can occupy the same mental space where they can let themselves get that big, but then
Right.
all of a sudden make a choice to lose 120 pounds, at the drop of a hat. And before that, he was studying for the ASVAB day and night so that he can get a qualifying score.
Right.
It's just it's impressive, man. It just shows you that power of that mind. If you want to make a switch, all you have to do is start with that choice.
A
It all
hundred
starts from
percent.
that.
Have you ever had to, or have you ever made a choice that changed or transformed you as a man, or was it a process, or was it just like, hey, this is what I want to do now?
No, I have one specifically that I can just come to automatically was forgiveness of my father. I had a large chip on my shoulder for a lot of years. Not to bore everybody with the details, but it was a tumultuous relationship. We had sacrificed a lot when we moved from Connecticut to Georgia, and
Hmm.
it wasn't the best relationship. Hadn't talked to him in like 6 months. Um, so I got married and had a long conversation with my aunt about a week after I got back from my honeymoon, and I decided. I said, I'm tired of feeling this way. I mean, it hurt me. It was a drain on me of my energy. So I decided to forgive him.
Yeah.
And once I made that choice, it freed me. It freed me from the pain. It freed me from the anxiety. It freed me from, you know, um, self-destruction of what happened and transpired in my youth. And man, I'm a better man for it. And I've got a great relationship with my father now. She's got a great relationship with my daughters. And that specifically, not albeit not physical, it was a big thing that help shape me to the man I am today.
Man, I didn't know you um reconcile with your father in that way. It was a decision that you made, or did you like go to counseling, or it was just I want this to be better type of
No,
thing?
it was just a decision I made. I've been to counseling in on and off. But once I made that decision, those events that happened in my youth really don't really garner any real estate, or they don't
Wait.
hold any real estate in my mind anymore, because I released it. They say that forgiveness is like swallowing poison expecting somebody else to die, because that's the reality of it. You're the one that keeps bringing it up and hurting yourself on it. That other person, it's not affecting them at all. And that was the reality of my situation. My dad, I didn't talk to him for 6 months. He just thought I was busy. He didn't even know I was mad at him or didn't like him. So
Really?
that's how, that speaks to that statement 100%. And man, like I said, that was probably the single most largest decision I made in my life, to be, the man I am today.
I say that word forgiveness is is huge, because just like you said, we hold things um on our own hearts, and the other people aren't even affected. They aren't even having any second thought about what is going on with you. They're just moving on, and you're frustrating yourself. You're shaking some days. Is wild how forgiveness is a relief, a release for us to keep moving on in our lives and reconnect those bonds. Because when you were having ill feelings, it created disconnect between you and your father, and he probably wasn't even aware. But the fact that you're able to reconcile now, you can find that connecting point, or we can find those connecting points when we learn to forgive, to reconnect those bonds. Because it's me, I know I would want my father in my children's lives, and our disconnection would possibly prevent that. So you looking bigger than you and how you feel, um, to me allowed you to make that decision, and now so much more connection has been created because of that decision you made. It's phenomenal, man. Uh, I
Appreciate it.
applaud you. I know we said we applaud David Goggins, but I applaud you. That's big. It's cool to just say, "Hey, I'm gonna go change my body, or I'm gonna go change my life." But what you did is gonna change, honestly, generations, because of the connection that you're gonna have, your children gonna have. Then they're gonna have a different relationship that they present to their children. So amazing, man.
Appreciate it.
It's
Appreciate
it's
it.
bigger than the physical.
That's right. Absolutely.
But let's jump
Absolutely.
back to David Goggins, um, his physical perspective, and he eventually tells us that it's not even really about his physical anymore. It's about him breaking mental barriers. And one thing that he recognizes, that human beings only use 40% of their capabilities, of their capacity. And then he said he learned that running 100-mile races, like the story of him running 100-mile race out of the blue.
Oh, the
I
3 day notice.
Yeah, I keep everything we talk about is like, this man's crazy. This is wild. But this he actually is, because I think about a marathon was the longest race I had heard of before we read this book. And he's talking about running three and a half of those on 3 days notice. And then goes and works out and lifts heavy the day before. And he said that the furthest he had ever run was 20 miles, and he got to mile 50 and he felt done, broken, shot. But that's when he felt like he had that moment in his mind where I've got more than what my body is telling me right now. And he got up. I mean, it might have looked ugly. He probably was walking, falling halfway, but he kept pushing. And that's what I feel like we as people, in whatever realm we step into, have to realize, like, we're gonna reach those points where we feel like that's it, but we got more. So in your life, have you been to a point where you felt exhausted, run down, destroyed, and found the energy, the mindset to continue to move forward?
Yeah, after I got into construction when I was in my mid 20s, and I was actually in the field. During that time, my wife gave birth to our daughters, twin daughters, and I was traveling superintendent. So I would build building in South Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. I was all over the place. Missed like
Mm-hmm.
the first 6 months to a year they were born. Well, I came home one day and my wife pretty much gave me an ultimatum. She said, it's the job or us. You leave out of town again, we're gone. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So this was the middle of the recession. It was like 2008, 2009. There wasn't anybody hiring in construction. You couldn't find a job if you'd work for free. But we opened our own business. And it was completely unrelated to anything I had a core competency in. So I was lost. And the amount of stress that I had on myself at that time was more than I had ever faced in my life. Because
Mm-hmm.
not only was I financially responsible for my family, but I was also responsible financially for the investment we made that was basically our nest egg. And that put a lot of pressure on me. Time was running out. The months were getting pretty thin as far as the break even. You start to when you start to make money. So we were in probably about 6 months in, and we started turning a profit. And after
Mm-hmm.
that, we just slowly were able to grow it and grow it and grow it. But I remember making cold calls in the office of that business, and I had a picture of my daughters on my computer screen. I would look at them and I would make calls. And I'd look at the picture and I'd make calls. And for 5 years, I did that, knowing that's not what I wanted to do, but I needed to do it for the benefit of my family. Luckily, I was able to take it, sell it, and then get back into the construction business where my heart is. But those were some rough times for me, man. They were very difficult. A lot of questions you ask yourself, uncertainty for your future. But during that time, man, I learned so much about myself, and my ability to handle stress just went up
Yeah.
exponentially because of the amount of stress that put on me. But it was a difficult time, but I would never have any other way.
Is two things I heard in there. David Goggins talked about friction, and it sounded like you went through a whole lot of friction in that time span. I mean,
Absolutely.
friction, one, working away from home, then the friction of your wife giving you the ultimatum to diving in something like, what made you jump into something that you had no experience in business?
Man. So I always wanted to own my own business. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Part of the reason why I don't like to be managed and I tend to have issues with bosses and things like that. But this was something that I felt like I could take the business relationships and carry that over to whatever I did after that. I knew I wasn't going to retire with it, but it was a stopgap, and really wanted to maximize, those contacts that I made and the people that I met. And maybe just a little bit of dumb youth. I don't know.
But whatever it was, it added more friction, and then for you to come out and be in the space that you want to be, but now you have more patience, and you're more prepared for the stressors because you've been rubbed smooth. I mean, you get a high grit piece of sandpaper and you just start rubbing,
That's
and
right.
that's where you get to the point where you can stand tall as you do when you step into a room. Eric, first time I saw you had white shoes on at a Christmas party. And I was like,
Oh, Cousin Eddie.
yeah. I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
remember
this guy
that.
right here. But it's an energy that you move with, that you speak with, that resonates. So all that friction that some of it you self-imposed, it was well worth it to become the guy that I admire, honestly, as you move through. The second thing that I saw in what you said was going back to those goals. You said that you were in a space that you didn't know if you necessarily that you knew wasn't for you, but the goal of your twin daughters, that reminder that every phone call that I make, every decision I make in this space affects these two young ladies, and they're my responsibility. That was deep because, yeah, we go to this. We talked about writing our goals down, accountability, but that's that pure image of everything that I do affects where I'm trying to go and who I'm trying to support. So that was deep to me too. I hope your daughters recognize how impactful they are to where you all are right now in life.
I think they got a chance to see it. That's one thing I enjoyed about COVID was the ability to bring my daughters to work. Right. So,
Yeah,
we are out there chasing our dreams in the business world and dealing with owners and those difficulties and subcontractors. They don't know that kind of stuff. They see me when I
right.
get home. I'm on my phone. They don't know what's going on. But for them to have the ability to see that, I think I elevated a little bit in their eyes, and they're like, man, he's really putting in work.
Yeah,
So I enjoyed that part. But yeah, man, answering a call is big. It's big in a lot of areas of my life, as I know it is yours. But I'm glad I had the strength to answer the call during that time, and it's made me a better man.
definitely, definitely. And it's funny you say that because when I was a child, I used to just say my dad went to work. All right, that's it. But I don't really know what that means. My mom went to work. I don't really know all the stress that comes, all the responsibility that comes with that. All I know is you go to work, you come home to me.
Right.
But to go out there and actually see, I guarantee it created a different kind of respect and understanding. Like, that is different. That is special. Let me. Oh, damn,
Yeah.
you want me to take the trash out? All right, cool. Let me take that off your plate.
Yeah, well, some of that comes with age. You get a little bit of wisdom, right? And you
Agreed.
start to see it and appreciate. But man, reading your book, I immediately that's what I thought about your parents. Your mom, especially in a construction world, as a woman, an African American woman, no doubt. There's no question that was a difficult situation, and what a man she's created and raised in you with that. So I mean, anytime you see your mom, hats off to her, because I know she's been through the fire, man. I can imagine that. And
I
another
will.
one we work with, Diana Carter, same thing, a lady in our industry. They can do it, but I mean,
Right.
it probably hadn't been pleasant on the ride up. There's a lot of chauvinist men out there, especially back in that time when they were coming up through the ranks. So I got a lot of respect for any women that steps in this business.
Like I
I
said,
tip my hat.
we talk about friction.
Yeah,
Man.
exactly. That's
We
exactly
talk
right.
about friction. Yeah, my mother would she would try to make it soft so we didn't, I guess, stress about it. But you could tell at times it was just getting to her because, like in my book, I express how she used to come home and just become mom, super mom, even though she
Right.
still got the weight of the world outside of the house on her. So yeah, she's an amazing woman. I'll make sure she sees this, and I tell her
Yeah.
myself. So the last thing I want to talk about with you, and this has been a great conversation, Eric. So everybody else that has not read the book, or maybe somebody who has read the book, how does David Goggins' story affect the everyday person?
I mean, you don't have to run a 100-mile race to better yourself. It doesn't have to be that extreme. Take your health into consideration. Start going to the gym 2 days a week, 1 day a week, 2 days a week. You start those goals small, you grow on them. If it's physical, have the courage to leave somebody that's abusive to you. Maybe it's a spouse that's abusive to a woman or something to that effect. But having that courage to move forward. I mean, it starts with that. Like I always say it, and it maybe sounds cliche, but it's that choice that you make that starts that journey of change. And it's just
Yep.
that one choice. And the rest is just hand on the plow, grinding through it, taking it as it comes. It's nobody says it's easy. It's not easy. It's
Right.
not easy to shoot for the stars, and chase those dreams, because sometimes there's disappointment in it. Sometimes you can't control them. I mean, you get to a certain place in your career and you're competing for top spots. And unfortunately, it's not always how well you perform that'll make the decision on you getting to the next level or not.
Right.
Sometimes it's past relationships, so you got to be able to know and look internally, and be okay that you put in the work that you knew you could put in, and maybe not necessarily achieve it at this time, or at least when you think so. But I think that are more people grinding out and chasing those goals, and focused on positive things in life. I think really, I think it would start to shift the world. If I mean, that sounds a little bit too big, but people got too much time on their hands if they're always blowing people up on Facebook, and they're championing these causes, and they're not out there living. They're out there living behind their screen.
Right.
Um, just I'm not about that. I'm trying to focus on me and my family and the people that I impact. Hopefully I impact you and the people we work with. So I think anybody can take a message out of this book. Through the abuse and possibly the strained relationship with his brother, his father, death. I mean, he's kind of lived the full gamut, man. And if you could just glean a little piece of that information out of it, I think it's just a life improvement.
I think you hit the nail on the coffin. People come and ask me, especially when I was playing football, they ask me, "How did you do this? How did you get to this?" And the first thing I always would tell people is decide and go. Make the decision that you want to, and then go. Don't worry about what the plan is going to be. Don't worry about what 2 years, 5 years looks like down the road. Decide that you want to do this, and then go. The second thing I tell them is show up. You say you want to do it. You say you want to go. You got to show up every day. Because if you show up every day, you got the opportunity to grow, to learn, to get better. You got the opportunity to fail. And sometimes failure is the most impactful thing we can do. But if you don't show up, you can't do any of that. And
Right.
to me, that's what David Goggins did. He decided, he went, and he showed up for everything. Everything, things that he didn't even need to be in the space of, he found a way. Like right now, the last thing I heard he was doing was firefighting. Like you've got it. You're retired from the military. You've gone through three different branches of the military training, and you decide to go out there and fight fires. But it's going something amazing has to come out of it because he's committed, he's going, he's chasing, and he's showing up every day. Even if he's just impacting the guys on the line he's with, his desire to just go. Whatever I decide I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go do it is gonna create impact, whether it's his life or the next man. And that's what I really feel like this book is his story of choosing and going, um, and showing up and then impacting the world around him.
That's right. Yeah. I think, having that internal dialogue that you could see he has, um, they say you say something like 3,000 to 6,000 words to yourself a day, but what are you saying to yourself? Is it
Yeah.
positive? Though what you say to yourself and with those 3 to 6,000 words, shapes how you live life, what kind of quality life you have. Um, for me in my life, I've chosen to challenge myself continually. I know you do the same. I can see it. Uh, and to be honest, man, it's been a good life. I am not where I want to be exactly, but I'm on my way.
Yeah, definitely. Man, Eric, it's always good to talk with you, but this has been phenomenal for you to come on to my podcast, The Huddle, and just share your wisdom from life. I mean, of course, this book kind of guided us down the road, but I think what you said has some real impact. One, impact me, but then also the next person that gets a chance to listen. Um, I think they'll find value in you and your story, and then how you interpreted this book, how we interpreted this book. It's been. I'm gonna use the word dope, man. It's
Man, I
uh,
enjoy it. I always enjoy talking to you, Wallace. Man, you're a special man. I think a lot of you. Um, and man, that book of yours, we need to have lunch to talk about it, man. I got notes all over that thing. I loved it.
oh,
I
I
loved it.
look forward to it, man. I say
I
let's
loved
do
it.
it soon.
That's right. Absolutely.
So Eric Labbe, is there anything that you would like to say to the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're struggling, you're having a hard time, set your mind on that first goal. Make that choice that you're going to push forward and achieve that. Don't make it so lofty that it may be out of reach this time, but start with small stuff, and those small achievements build on themselves, um, you know, uh, and just remember to stay humble with it. Just because you're achieving goals doesn't mean you're better than everybody else. uh, I appreciate everybody listens to this, and hope that everybody keeps pushing on.
Keep
Stay
pushing.
hard.
Keep pushing and stay hard. I like it. This has been the huddle. We appreciate your time. See y'all next time.
Appreciate it.